Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland. I'm one of the co-founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. With me to discuss episode 5 of Skeleton Crew is retired Judge Matthew Sciarrino and Stephen Tollafield. Your Honor, Stephen, how are you each doing?
Great, thank you.
Doing really well. Very
Good.
happy after the holidays.
So, did you guys get any fun Star Wars items for Christmas?
Yes, I got a nice new salt and pepper lightsaber grinder. I got a BB-8 mug and a couple of other items for a couple of new ornaments for my Star Wars tree.
Wow.
Stephen, how about you?
I did not really get any Star Warsy stuff. I'm gonna get some with my Christmas money, I
I guess you were
think.
on the naughty list, Steve.
Wait,
Yeah.
I got you a book.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, that came before. I was thinking when I was in Ohio. Yeah, the
Gotcha.
beautiful Star Wars bestiary. Um, it's so cool. Have you seen the book
I
in
have the
person?
book. The book is gorgeous.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful. The artwork is incredible.
Yeah, the
I,
book is really, really beautiful.
I don't have that one yet. But again, there are a bunch of us that are very easy to shop for. So
Yeah.
won't name names, but there are other legal geeks who got Star Wars or Star Trek or Marvel items uh, for Christmas. So because there's a lot of us are pretty easy to shop for. So yes, I got a Star Wars toaster, start with that does Darth Vader on it. So
Nice.
haven't tested it yet, but I opened that. I was like, oh, that's pretty fun.
That's really
So
cool.
yeah, good stuff. Very good stuff. And Lucasfilm related, I did get the Indiana Jones history making of book. That's fun to go through and see everything that they did.
Nice.
Well, with that, let's get all piratey. And this is a great episode. And we open with the parents and an issue of computer hacking. Stephen, can you walk us through that issue, please?
Yeah, right off the bat, they start committing crimes. In the grand tradition of 80s movie parents kind of bending the law or lying to authorities to protect their kids, the parents go on a bit of a crime spree to access the computer system at the place where they work, which is still not exactly clear what it is or what they do. But Neil's mom gives to Wim's dad a small device that she tells him will allow him to access the um, access code to send a message past the barrier. So immediately that raises the federal law, which is the Federal Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA, which prohibits unauthorized computer access. Wim's dad says that he doesn't have clearance to get that information, so he has to access something using this device. The CFAA includes criminal penalties and civil penalties. The criminal penalties attach if you first obtain national security information. And like I said, we don't really know what it is they do at this place and this who the supervisor is or what the supervisor does. And I'm wondering if like the enterprise of At-Atten is itself kind of the government. So
It
if
seems that way to me too, that it
yeah,
is at least a quasi-governmental entity and the same where they work. So I would say that I think they can be considered a government agency in light of the discussions we're having.
yeah, and I think if the access code is to get past the barrier, that seems like has security dimensions to it. So I think that that's potential very serious crime under the federal law. It starts at 10 years for the first offense and can go up to 20 years for the second offense. So they are not messing around. But then there's also civil penalties too. If there's any damage or anything that's stolen of value, then there can be civil damages or injunctions against it. But conveniently, Farah, Fern's mom, is the supervisor who tells the droid who caught him to delete all the information and to forget anything that happened. So that's convenient, so they're not liable for that. But the Federal Stored Communications Act is another federal law that prohibits the accessing of communications that are kind of at rest as opposed to communications that are being transmitted. So because they were accessing this code to send information, the data that they were trying to access had kind of communications implications. So they might kind of be on the hook for this too. This includes using stolen passwords to access stored data. So I would think that device probably has some sort of password feature to it. And then finally, most states have a lot of hacking laws on the books, including California, which has Penal Code 502C, which is just the knowing access of a computer system or network without permission. It's very broad. If there's no injury, like here, if they just kind of access it, it's a misdemeanor up to 1 year in jail or fines up to $5,000. But if there's hacking of a government's service, that can be treated as a felony. So it can be much more serious if, as we said, this is kind of a government website. So that right off the bat for committing crimes, it's great.
And New York has similar statutes with
I
regards
imagine.
to trespassing into the computer that without authorization to do so. This might even go as high as various espionage acts as well, going through the barrier, because the barrier seems to be a very classified thing on the planet. So I'm going to guess that there could be some espionage ramifications which have even stiffer penalties, including life imprisonment and other significant penalties as well.
Yeah, great observation. I mean, Wim's dad even used the word clearance, which
Right, right.
suggests like some sort of security agency.
Yeah, it also appears that they haven't had any communications go out for a very long time, possibly centuries, which begs the question, what are they doing? I mean, it'd be like the Fed not interacting with the economy. How are they going to analyze interest rates and exchange rates and fungibility of money? Again, it'd be like your Schwab investors hidden behind a cloak, and yet that society is still successful when we don't know how they're doing any macroeconomics. It's a really weird situation that you have a self-sustaining large town, because I don't think this is taking up a continent or a state. I think again, it's like a large city. Like if Chicago was the only city on planet Earth and somehow was self-sufficient, that's and focused on finance, which is again just weird. Uh, I don't know if they'll get into explaining how they survive and how they operate on this closed economy and ecosystem, but they are, and that raises all kinds of weird questions.
Was it this episode or the last episode where they said that Ad Atten was a mint?
Uh,
That was this episode where
Okay.
we learned that that's why it's the treasure planet, because it literally
Right.
was printing Republic credits. And I think this also dovetails into the theory that this is now some kind of AI controlled world, because with what you said, Josh, I think the only way that that there's got to be some kind of fake contact with the outside world. And the only way that kind of makes sense is if there's some kind of computer overlord or AI that has taken over the planet that's kind of giving the marching orders as to what's going on in the rest of the world, the rest of the universe or the galaxy. Because otherwise, I think that the inhabitants of the planet itself would have issues with, not hearing from the rest of the galaxies and the rest of the planets over this long period. So I think there is some kind of chicanery going on uh, at the top of Ad.
yeah, because I mean, they do have some pop culture, but is it just something that's like 500 years old? And I'm like, people reread books, but if the libraries weren't getting new books or movie theaters weren't getting new movies, how is how do you keep everyone like not just entertained, but functional, something to look forward to, as opposed to we have everything that's in the Library of Congress is what we have for eternity. Like this is it. We're nothing new unless they have local productions happening. So again, it's just lots of questions, and I don't know if we're going to get answers to them. Because most Star Wars shows don't get that into the weeds with this is how the society functions.
It's
Yeah,
interesting because
we lead the weeds for the books and the novels and the comic series to come up, but it definitely got a high, somehow referred to a lot of the High Republic, Old Republic time periods for which other things are exploring, which is typical in the Star Wars, especially with Disney, in that it kind of cherry picks and then it leads to other shows and it somehow connects, and what we don't connect we'll leave for future novels and comics.
Which again, leave them wanting. Leave again, people are talking about them on podcasts like this. How's this all working out?
And as someone who reads every single novel that comes out as it comes out, I have absolutely no problem with it.
Oh, you just teasing us about being retired.
Well, I was doing that while I was working too.
Like, I mean, I do volunteer a lot, but work's busy, but still, like, that's a lot to read.
I've been
Let,
blessed as a fast reader.
oh God, dyslexia. Uh, let's talk about the property issue that jumped out to me. So when they get to, the spa planet, and we find out that Skull Ridge Mountain is now a spa, I started thinking in terms of was Skull Ridge Mountain abandoned property after the death of Captain Renard? And and the reason I think that or question it and also throw in how long it's been is like rights that attach because property is about your bundle of sticks. And if Skull Ridge Mountain was the pirate captain's and that's where he had a stronghold on Battle World or whatever the planet's name was, he dies. Several hundred years go by. This isn't an issue of somebody dying intestate and property eschewing to the state. It's he's dead. Nobody lives there. That makes this abandoned, and thus you have a redevelopment agency going, this would be a great spa, and they build a spa. I think that's completely legit, and you have a droid freaking out about, this is where we dissolve bodies, not where people have mud baths. Uh, uh, Your Honor, right? Or Stephen, you're smiling. Any thoughts?
it just occurred to me that that the well, first of all, I'm so excited that we got to see a spa in Star Wars. I do love a good spa. And Star Wars lives in so frequently in the well-used kind of rundown aesthetic. It's so fun to see from time to time what luxury looks like in Star Wars because it's so beautiful. Especially with like Doug Chiang designing the prequel stuff, and he designed a lot of the stuff for this episode too. And it just looks so cool, and I'd want to go there so badly. It looks so wonderful. I want to see what a sensory gymnasium is. That sounds so cool. But also like the spots, the lair itself seemed like it was hidden. That the whoever the Lunupa authorities, the development agency, whoever it was, probably didn't even know that that was there. But there may have been some sort of ruins, as SM33 says that they use the pits to dissolve people, as you mentioned. So there must have been like remains or indications that people had been there before. So I think you're right. Like this would just be something that people discovered that existed in antiquity, maybe, but it didn't really have any clear owner. So I would suppose that whatever government could just kind of claim it, right? Eminent domain of some kind, maybe.
I think that's legitimate because we don't know if it's a government entity or if it's viewed that government, property originates from the nation state and then is either, like Homestead Act or grant deed, like opening Oklahoma and people rushing in. Like, is it something along those lines for how this property gets opened up to a hotel franchise? It'd be like opening Vegas. Behold, make this desert a resort. And by golly, you have a very nice spa in the desert now. In this case, a snowy, cold mountaintop. Um, which did remind me of one of the Battlestar Galactica mini movies with a young Adama, that where they end up in a ski lodge during the war. So, except this is actually functional as opposed to more like The Shining. Uh, but yeah, I do think it had to have been either abandoned, and then the state could say, yes, we're gifting you or granting you a deed to build your hotel resort spa on this. Your Honor, do you have any redevelopment thoughts?
Well, pirates tend not to be legitimate owners of property to begin with, for the most part. I mean, there's been some rare exceptions where some pirates become a little bit more legitimate. Some of them even becoming governors of various islands in the Caribbean, etc. But I'm going to guess that in as much as he was hiding his treasure, and certainly did not want anyone to know the location of him or his treasure, it probably was a secret uh, ownership anyway. So I don't think they even had to deal with any kind of abandonment issue to get the property. Also, in much of Star Wars, from the old Republic to the High Republic, and those of us that played some of the various video games, the corporations in the Star Wars universe are granted charters for various planets to mine resources, to open up hotels. So I'm going to guess that there is some overlording corporation that probably owns this spa that either leases the land from the Planetary Authority or has taken over the planet altogether.
It's interesting you mentioned the way that because the way that the ships flew in to escort the Onyx Cinderin was very Empire Strikes Back coded, the way that
Yeah, the
Cloud
mining
City.
guild. It was the
Yeah,
first thing I
exactly.
thought of was the Cloud City and the mining
Yeah.
guild, and it could be that maybe there's a hospitality guild that runs various spas and cantinas throughout the Outer Rim territories, and we don't really even know where, but I'm going to guess that this was an Outer Rim area because that tends to be where most of the stories take place because there's a sense of lawlessness out there, and you did have the hut that was enjoying the spa. I love that scene, but you don't get many of the huts to come into the core worlds. So I'm gonna guess that this is an Outer Rim type territory.
That and the banking clan's holding a economic
Yes,
conflict.
that was great to see all the Muns and the banking clan representatives. I truly I like when Star Wars shows not just that dirty element, but the high class, the Naboo, there's been some great scenes in Andor, which has shown the luxury of Star Wars, and I like when they show that too, because it does add a lot to the story and the yin yang of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I was having some serious Clone Wars flashbacks with the banking clan and
Very
like
much.
was it Senator Clovis? I was just like, wait, this is all seeming super familiar. Uh, and but it moves at a good click. So as our heroes are approaching the spa, we find out over the radio chatter that the spa has banned children. And that immediately made me think of Club Med ads in the 1980s, and also the Virgin Cruises, where again it's the attractive young woman coming out saying, we don't allow children on our cruise ships. And some people might wonder, is that legal to say this is an adults only cruise or an adults only spa? And what kind of discrimination laws could be kicking in because of like family status? Can you have a hotel that doesn't allow kids? And would either one of you like to take a swing at this?
You absolutely can have a hotel or resort that doesn't allow kids, and it's done for their protection. The other one, like Club Med, there was one that I think still is in existence, Hedonism, that was an adults only resort that upped the level a little bit from the Club Med adults only, and those areas were clearly banned children from even the Disney cruise, which is as child friendly as can be, does have an adult area of the pool. It's done more so that the adults can have a little peace and quiet and not hear screaming kids for a little while. But it does have a small section that's adult only that they keep the kids out of. So, I don't have any problem with adult area spas.
It's again, the sounds of a screaming child is pretty magical. So it's going and a 1,000-foot ship would get pretty small with a lot of them screaming their guts out. So having the quiet zone for the adults to regroup and not start crying themselves, I completely understand that.
And a very nice coffee bar is in the adult area too. It has an adult area pool. It has like an upper scale cafe which has various cappuccinos and lattes, and it's a wonderful area of the Disney boat.
I do think we should all go, but that's another story. We're gonna have a retreat. But in the meantime, Stephen, your thoughts, because how did you react to that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course you can have, especially where people are maybe enjoying sort of in various states of undress and that sort of thing, like at a spa, like certainly you might um the proprietor may want to limit children's access just to, as a judge said, for their own protection. And it's funny because we think of when we talk about discrimination, we talk about protected classes, but we talk about those in the sense that any exclusion of those classes is considered suspect because it tends to be, like race or religion or national origin. The bases for excluding people on those characteristics are usually invidious and not okay. But when we talk about protecting children, we think of them as excluding them from things that might damage them or be sort of contrary to maybe um parents' wishes of like what they can have exposure to, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's funny, as a protected class, children, excluding them is not as generally considered as suspect as other protected classes.
Yeah, it's like
I'll
chewing.
go one more in my new state here in Florida, going into effect on December 31st at midnight, are various laws that prohibit minors from using social media without their parents' permission, and requires all sites to have some kind of age verification system. So as a result, various adult websites are going dark in Florida because they refuse to violate what they consider the privacy of their the people accessing their sites, and they don't want to do this age verification type of system. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because there are several court challenges to all of these that will be filed, I'm sure, on January the 1st, and we'll get to watch what happens there. But a lot of those new laws go into effect December 31st at midnight.
Fascinating. I would add that children aren't allowed in bars, and you're not going to have a cigar room with children running rampant. So again, it's for their protection.
And various gambling establishments. Some of them have rules where they can go on the floor. Some they have to stay on various paths. Some they can't access the machines, but they can be in the area. Some they can't be on the floor that has the gaming machines at all. So, other states have various different rules to deal with it, but there's certainly no problem with protecting the protected class of the protecting children.
Yeah, I mean, no child wants to see a hut get a rub down, so uh no, thank you. Uh So that aside, so that's the first like 3 minutes of the episode. We then have trying to check in to the spa, which raises the wise elders, and the kids are dressed up, pirate hats, robes, covering their faces, speaking in gibberish. I'm just going to go out there and say that's fraud. They're trying to perpetuate an untruth. Do either of you guys want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would say it's trespassing too, because if you're gaining access to a particular property through deceit, um, then I think it could well be a trespass too. But they clearly were doing a willful misrepresentation of their age and who they were, so that they would be able to get access to the spa and of its luxuries.
Does it make a difference though that they were actually paying? Because they weren't actually getting a benefit for nothing. They were still paying and actually paying quite a premium, which is sort of involved in the bribery.
Right,
What
and
is
arguably, once they accepted that bribe to let them in, they're now dealing with unclean hands as well,
right?
and as a result, they the administration technically knew, or maybe knew, or closed a blind, or purposely chose not to know, and then as a result, they are guests, and guests have a certain protected status as guests in a hospitality type situation. But yeah, that's a very good point, Stephen.
Yeah, well done, well done. So let's get into the bribery because when you start just what's the name for your reservation, and you're basically giving someone $1,000 bill, whatever the old Republic credits are worth, it's a lot. And just here's one, here's two. Is that like giving someone 2 grand that she's immediately pocketing or putting up her sleeve? Bribery, Your Honor. Steve and I are in the civil litigation camp. You presided over criminal courts for a career. Your thoughts on bribery?
He clearly was uh, bribing the hotel hostess in order to circumvent their rules. Whether she was a governmental official or not, I guess would deal with who owned the spa. What was the spa, the planetary business, and as such, is she a governmental official? Because bribery of a governmental official has a certain level of crime that's more enhanced. Uh, if she's a private company and she's willing to basically, and he's willing to pay a premium price for services, it's not necessarily a bribe.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say that I don't know that it's illegal to say like, hey, valet, I'll give you an extra $5 if you keep my car close,
Right, or give
like
me the
that's
better table at
right,
the
exactly.
restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like it's only a crime if as we are talking about before, if the hotel, if Lanupa is like a government enterprise, because then like getting a government benefit from a public official, that's illegal for sure.
but it's also coupled with a false impersonation, which is the next issue. But because it's your professor was at Gorlock or something with a G, and asked for a room upgrade, so he's impersonating another individual.
Mm. Yeah, sort of an identity theft issue, I suppose.
Yeah, and paid for it.
Mm.
So there's again, I would want to go look at the bribery statute for California and federal to see if it has to be a public official. Uh, if there's any other ways that this could be. Uh, you know,
I mean, there's fraud in the inducement, and there's other fraud statutes, but I don't think it's bribery unless it's to some public official of some sort. But clearly, it could be a fraud. But the other question I have is is the person accepting that money really not knowing of this fraud? Is she accepting the premium because she knows about the fraud and it's to keep quiet? And her bosses, there might be an issue with her bosses because she might not be passing on this premium to her employer. She might be pocketing this money, and that would be a theft of services on her part, her bosses, but it wouldn't necessarily be a crime with the kids or their guardian, so to speak.
The fact that we have Pocket show up and point out, hey, it's you and you left me in a pit of leeches and, you know, outs him. And Jaw then puts down a whole bunch more credit in order to,
Get
for,
away.
yeah, in order for getting a room. Uh, yeah, okay, I do like fraud in the inducement, because this isn't clean. Like there's definitely shenanigans taking place in order to get a nice room. I mean, I understand the desire to go explore the buffet, but I would also be highly motivated not to get shot by pirates. So that that that's the only uh, questionable conduct I saw in this. The kids have been pretty good at understanding their situation, like still being kids, but understanding their situation. Here
Perfect
we see that,
angels. They're
yeah,
perfect angels. I love
and,
them.
and here they've been screwing around like kids, and from being in the costumes and jumping on the bed and acting a little obnoxious. And are they just at their breaking point? Because are they like 3 or 4 days in on an adventure now and starting to lose their little minds because they're tired of being shot at, and they suddenly feel safe and can get something to eat. But you think they would not forget about Brutus and gang so quickly. So that was the only thing that, but again, going from at Akron, where they were child soldiers, maybe they do need a little mental break and they're tired of being cannon fodder.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think this was a bit of an R&R when they arrived in that room, and that room really was nice. That as a result, they were a little bit more rambunctious and more kid-like than had been where they were kind of acting above their years. Here they kind of showed their years, and I think that argument can be made that yes, they're starting the whole adventure is starting to be less of a fun trek through Gooniesville, and it's more of they're realizing, we might not get home, or we're not going to see mom and dad anymore. So I think they have reached a little bit of a breaking point, so to speak.
yeah, I want something to eat that's not 600-year-old hardtack. Like, I would like to not sleep on a dusty bed or a hammock and be threatened with getting killed all the time. So feeling safe, they let their guard down because they suddenly feel normal again. Which goes to the issue of the bounty hunters that have been, or the bounty that was put out by Captain Brutus on Jod and the pups. It raises the question in my mind on the lawfulness of that bounty, because a bounty normally involves a bail bondsman. There's and somebody's going out because they jumped bail, opposed to a hitman. And the Star Wars universe tends to conflate bail bondsmen and hitmen as bounty hunters. And we have Pocket calling in the bounty for the pirates to arrive. Do either of you have thoughts on the lawfulness of that bounty, on whether it is enforceable or not?
It's not a bounty in its truest sense of the word, in that it's not a legalized bringing someone back to the authority. This is a criminal deal amongst criminals that one criminal lord is saying to others out there, if you bring this person to me, there is a fee for which I will pay. And this is, the first bounty we ever hear of in this Star Wars universe is the one that Jabba puts on Han Solo. So this is akin to that kind of bounty. So it's clearly something that's legitimate in the Star Wars universe, but would not be that would be a legitimate bounty in our universe.
I I guess it would be kind of like a conspiracy. Would it be kind of a conspiracy to kind of kidnap a person, or false imprison them, or
I think the Republic would see it that way. If it were
yeah.
to charge them, it would be these people conspire to kidnap someone, and so on that end, yeah, it's clearly not a legal bounty. It's just uh, those that are in the bounty in the guild, not all of their pucks are as legitimate as other ones.
Yeah, because it turns into murder for hire pretty fast.
Yeah.
And that's just, we don't do that. Like, we just don't do that. So, when we get going through the Goonie side of this, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Last Crusade, that there's a lot of inspiration from older media. That's a love letter to all of those things. But we have booby traps that either behead people or launch people up into spikes, raises the issue of lethal force to defend property. And as a get-go, that's a no-no. You can have lethal force to defend a person or another person if their life is in jeopardy, and that's a whole bunch of other analysis. But you can't protect a house with landmines. You can have your ring that can call law enforcement, but it can't detonate a landmine. Like, it doesn't work that way. And having all those booby traps is defending property with lethal force, which we don't allow. Uh, Either of you want to jump in on that? Stephen, why don't you go first if you have thoughts on, the acid pit?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, the traps in this episode were like next level cool. They were really fun. But yeah, as you said, defense theories of defense in the law tend to have a proportionality requirement. So if you can use lethal force if you reasonably suspect that someone is trying to kill you, but you can't kill someone just because they throw a punch. Same thing with property defenses. If someone's just trespassing, that's not an offense that involves life or death generally. So you can't defend your property with a spring gun, for example, all those old cases about from the Wild West and the frontier where people defending their property by rigging a gun that would fire if someone opened a door. Those are not lawful defenses of property. But wow, for the cool factor, yeah, a pit of acid is pretty rad.
Your Honor, you're in Florida. Do you have like guard pythons at the house now? Or is that
There was a pretty sizable black snake at our pickleball game today, but
yeah.
the he was friendly. He seems to occupy the same hedge, so we kind of know where to look for him and or not stick our hand in to get a ball. He
No,
he
thank
he,
you.
he could keep the yellow pickleball that comes in his sphere. Yeah, for the most part, we've taken the viewpoint that property is not worth a life. So one should not protect one's property with with deadly force. You can certainly use a reasonable amount of force in order to protect your property. And clearly, Florida has stand your ground laws where if someone comes into my house, and if I were to be an owner of a firearm and I were to choose to shoot that person that was entering my house, Florida certainly takes the view that I am protected in doing so.
But there's a difference between the castle doctrine, because
Yes, yes, big time.
California is different than you're protecting yourself, as opposed to I have the moat with the snakes and the alligators to keep
Correct.
people.
Correct.
Um,
I can't set up that when my garage opens, a javelin shoots out if you don't have the right code.
No, I mean, would be impressive if you pull that off, but completely not lawful at all. Um, you can respect the engineering. The same,
I also did very much love the monster that was down in the pit that turned out to be quite the nice guy. And there was a lot of like odes to old horror with his look, which I thought was really, really well done.
but friendly. So like to pull that off with like, we'll give him kind of a Cthulhu walrus mustache
Yeah, yeah.
grandfather.
Cthulhu, screamed out at me the first time I saw him. I was like, "Oh, this person who designed this clearly had Cthulhu in mind," and then the personality was just so different. It was great.
It's like you want to hang out with Gramps and tell stories. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was very, very well done.
yeah, again, it's the Star Wars is good at having that surprise. Oh, it's not something scary. It's actually he's okay. He just wants snacks and a good story, which at the end of the day might be all of us. So break out the ramen. Let's have a good story. So I'm on board. So then we get to the what should not be a surprise because the kids have been told don't trust Jod multiple times now.
I think two times in this episode alone to reinforce what had been done in all the other episodes already as well.
Yeah, don't trust him. And his view on attachments is a twisted view of to the point of nihilism of nobody else matters, it's just you. And that's again a perversion of a already bad plan from the Jedis of old. But let's talk about child abuse. He challenges Fern to a fight to the death, and then holds. She does take a swing at him because she's not dumb, and then gets a knife to her throat and told to yield. Yeah, I'd say this is child abuse. I mean, just
I don't think there's any doubt. Even though, he clearly did not want to hurt the children, putting them in such a horrific position to have a knife to one's throat is emotional distress and is clearly emotional abuse. So there is no doubt that that would rise to the level of some kind of abuse of the children.
One of the kids even said, "We're just kids, it's not fair." And they should
Yeah,
have said, "We're just kids, this is a crime." That would have been a lot more accurate.
yeah, I pivot to like making the scene. Like, how did they rehearse that? Because I can imagine Jude Law going like, okay, I'm like we're gonna talk about this and then we're gonna practice it because I'm not comfortable with this, but it's the part and like we got to tell that story, which is something frequent with horror movies with children on how do we not scar the child while making the horror movie. Like Denise Crosby had good stories about making Pet Cemetery and how the entire cast and crew were, determined not to emotionally traumatize the child in that movie. So what did they I'm curious to see like if there's a behind the scenes story for making this one scary scene. Um,
that will be interesting to see because I'm sure, in this day and age that there has to be counselors that are part of the process. There's now counselors that are part of every kind of love scene in the movies to deal with with various issues that have plagued Hollywood for a number of years. So I would be shocked if there wasn't some kind of counselors that were part of the scene with regards to this, and also hats off to Jude Law and the children actors on those scenes because they did a really really good job. I mean, you really kind of felt the terror of the kids in those moments.
yeah, it's you go tear up on cue. It's like good job, kid. Like, not easy. And make it look believable that they know what's happening to them is wrong, that they're getting hurt, that the guy that they trusted who saved them twice, at least twice, from Shmi going on a rampage to saving them from being child soldiers. Like, he had their trust. And did he even need to do this? Because he was going to get money anyway. Like, does he want to raise an army to go raid the mint that may or may not be in existence? That's still a giant gamble. Um, so yeah, just a lot to unpack, but definitely child.
Oh, I was going to say, circling back to the defense that we were talking about too, when Wim goes to grab the lightsaber, I mean, he completely, fails and botches it like a kid would. But then him using a lightsaber would be justified in that situation because Fern was in mortal danger. She had a knife to her throat, so he would have been justified in using lethal force to defend her.
Yes, if he only knew which way to point it.
Right. And
Well,
something.
there was the first time Luke picks up the lightsaber in New Hope. Exactly. So, to me, that was, that was really a nod to that, as well as to some of the critics that were that were critical of the the three new movies in that certain people were able to just pick up a lightsaber and know what to do with it. So I think that this kind of hit both of those areas knowingly.
But not the porgs. The porgs were
Not the
jumping on
porgs.
it,
The porgs were
looking at it.
the porgs came
Yes.
to mind too.
I
It's so great.
So there's a scout event where we teach the youth how to launch flares, because the first time you launch a flare should not be when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, your boat's sinking, and you're in a terrifying situation.
And you're
Really
and you're
hard
and
to,
you're reading the instructions.
yeah, worst time to do that. So doing it in daylight in a controlled setting with adult supervision is the way to go. And we tell the youth, don't look at it. Like, don't point it at yourself. Don't point it at other people. Like, you do all those things. And I remember one kid, like with a handheld flare, pointing it up, pulling the trigger, and nothing happened. And myself and another adult started moving over, and the kid started to look at, down the barrel. And like we both jumped to tackle the kid. It's like, no, don't do that. Uh, yeah, full slow motion yelling no. And no, nothing bad happened. Uh, but that's like whim with pointing it the wrong way, or he didn't know. uh and he probably has never seen a toy one. I mean, it's just probably in stories, so like he doesn't know where the emitter is. uh I mean, it does raise the issue of, are lightsabers inherently dangerous? And the answer should be yes.
Pretty sure the answer is
Pretty
yes.
much so, yes.
You'll put an eye out, or arm. Again, he didn't lose a foot. And that was um the big thing. But it's there's a lot there. There's a lot there with the scene that's brilliantly done. So, which then ends us with a breach of contract. They had a deal. They had an agreement. Jod broke that. And either of you want to get into the contract law issues here?
This clearly was an anticipatory breach. He clearly unilaterally decided that he wasn't going to abide by the deal. I think there's probably a very good chance that he will come around and maybe abide by it down the road. But at this point in time, I think it was very clear that he no longer has any intention to follow through with the deal that he made with the kids. So I would say he's an absolute breach.
Yeah. It's an oral contract too, which is perfectly fine. You can have a binding oral agreement. They didn't reduce anything to writing, but that's okay. I was wondering when when they were flying the ship into Lanuba and they realized that Ad Atten was the Mint, And Fern made sure to say, remember our deal, you will get a reasonable reward for returning us. But I don't remember them ever, modifying the reward in any way. But I guess I don't know that that would amount to sort of a contract modification where
Yeah,
she
I
was
think if
trying to,
the agreement was you're going to get a reward,
yeah,
I think it's almost, to add the word reasonable doesn't limit it necessarily because it would arguably it's not going to be an unreasonable award. He wouldn't want an unreasonable reward. He would rather have a reasonable reward.
right,
They might argue as to what is reasonable, but I don't think that term in any way really changes the
right.
deal.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Scrooge McDuck swimming pool of Old Republic credits for him to swim.
Yes. Although
Like,
if it is a mint,
yeah, but the other thing is, are they still producing? And like there's a whole bunch of questions we don't know. If it is a mint, is it still active? If it is active, are they sneaking stuff out? Like how would that work? Or are they just, again, are we with some AI society that's just making money and then recycling it? It-
that's my thoughts is that they're literally printing it and then the back end somewhere else they're melting it and then just recirculating continuous is my guess. Otherwise, you would run out of space on the planet because they're not taking it out of the barrier, it doesn't seem.
no, and it's nothing's like unlimited. It's not like a replicator making money because at that point, why? Like, you would flood the market and devalue the currency and create a situation of hyperinflation if you're just going to print money. There are historical examples of that not working well and buying a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of, cash. Like, again, you know, doesn't work for the economy. So while econ was not my strong suit in college, I have questions on how does this little society function? If it is like like a couple towns in Silicon Valley, it's like Mountain View and Sunnyvale are all that's left of the planet. How? Like, how are you succeeding with that tiny of a population to make ends meet? And like again, we haven't seen farms. We haven't seen, is there cattle? I mean, like, how are they, going about the business of living if everyone just has a white collar job? So again, I have questions and I don't know how much of it we're going to get answered, but I'm loving it. This was a wonderful Christmas Eve present. Did either of you watch it on Christmas Eve?
I watched it on, yes, Christmas Eve, and then following in true geeky fashion, watched Doctor Who on Christmas.
You
Yeah, I
did.
did watch. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, you first.
I was just gonna say I did watch it as God intended on my cell phone in an airport waiting for my my Christmas Eve red eye. I didn't watch it again on an actual screen, but yeah, did it on Christmas Eve. How about you?
Also, Christmas Eve, it was after the family get together and then went to church, then came home, went to bed. Then the next morning I did watch Doctor Who. So, as God intended, because this is a fantastic time to be alive. I got Star Wars and Doctor Who at Christmas, and they were both good. Fantastic.
And both had lobby check-ins.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, both did. Oh, it's like Disney made them. So on that Disney note, like Stephen was there. We went to Disneyland for my 50th birthday. And I stayed at the Disneyland Hotel, which I haven't done in a decade. And at check-in, they say, welcome home. And I thought like, oh, that's a nice power move right there to make everyone feel super happy and welcome. Uh, they are really good at that.
Listen, I certainly am a big Disney fan and love the fact that I'm now a Florida resident with an annual pass to go visit whenever I want to, and it's a quick hour and a half from my house, so it's nice.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, Stephen and I would have about an hour flight, and but that doesn't include airport and then travel time from John Wayne or Long Beach to the park. Uh I do want to go in January.
Mm.
Um yeah, my boss is going tomorrow for New Year's, so it's
Oh, fun.
yeah, it's again, I don't want to for New Year's Eve. I do think it's amateur night, but going to Disneyland and staying there would be a safe way to celebrate.
I found out, or my wife and I, we both found out later on in life that the two of us were actually in the park at the same time on New Year's Eve when we were both, it's like 7 or 8 year olds, clearly knew each other, didn't know that, but our parents made the connections that, oh, we were there too. So, some, and my wife is as big a Disney fan as am I. She is not a Star Wars fan, not even the smallest of Star Wars fans, but she loves Disney, and if I can, keep self-control on my visits to Galaxy's Edges and Olga's Cantina, where I too spent my 50th birthday. And we have enough time to see Figment and the rest of Disney. It's a very happy marriage.
Yeah, well done, sir. Well done. You did it right. Uh, it's yeah, again, it's just a wonderful time to be a fan, and to think back to 1983. I was sad after Return of the Jedi. I was like, well, we're done now. And sure, we get the Ewok Adventures and the Droids cartoon and Battle for Endor and Caravan of Courage, but it's like, and then the books come out, and just, there was a long wilderness period. And now we have a golden age and very grateful. And it was a great way to spend the holiday. And we get to do it again tomorrow night.
Yes, we
So,
do.
so God bless us, everyone. So, well, any other closing observations?
I'm just looking forward to some wrapping up of some of these issues. I know we're not going to get all of the answers for the finale, and to hopefully, there is another season of this. And the good news is Andor is kind of getting close as well. So, if the shows keep circulating and we get new ones, it's a wonderful time to be part of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, we only have
Absolutely.
3 more episodes, right?
Yes.
After
Yeah.
tomorrow and then 2 more weeks.
Yep. Yep.
A lot can
So
happen.
a lot can happen, and we should probably have a get together again for the last one. So, because that was fun.
Mhm.
All right.
And this one that's coming up is Bryce Howard. Bryce Dallas Howard is the director
Oh, fun.
of tomorrow's, and I have loved every episode that she's directed of the various shows. So I think this is going to be a really, really, really good one.
I hope they let her do a movie because she's really
I do
dominated.
too.
She's really good directing Star Wars, and I think, be very successful helming a
And you could
skeleton.
tell that she loves the universe and the product, and yeah, I'm really hopeful that she gets to do a movie as well.
Again, she got to hang out with Kurosawa and Lucas with her dad, so like give her the keys, let her do one, and
Absolutely.
we'll be there for money in hand for popcorn. So with that, everyone, thanks for listening. We hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, and any other holiday that you celebrate at this time of year. Have a very safe and responsible New Year's that doesn't need lawyers and or doctors or plumbers, carpet cleaners. It's a long list of things you don't want to need on New Year's. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. You all take care.